All right, Rabotai, Boker Or Mevorach. We're in Bekiim BeHalacha, Volume 2. We're at day 10. Yesterday we were on day 15. Now we're going back to day 10. That was a typo. Day 10, page 39 in the books. So now we get to a very important, and maybe I'm going to say neglected, halacha that actually is codified in the Shulchan Aruch, and that is the concept of TIKKUN HATZOT, where the halacha really wants people to get up or stay up at least until after halachic midnight. And we'll see how to calculate that in a minute. And they want the person, men primarily, to pay some time to contemplate the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash, the destruction of Jerusalem, the death of the Bekiim, and it should be done specifically at that time of the night, which is a moment of mercy. The Gemara, actually in Berachot, page 3, says that the night is divided up into 3 parts. Those parts are called mishmarot, and at each interval, God roars like a lion, it says. And he says, "Woe unto me, and woe unto my children, for due to their sins I had to destroy my house, and burn my sanctuary, and exile my children to foreign countries." And therefore God is lamenting the fact. And when God laments that fact, so therefore it's an opportune time also to lament with God the destruction, and it's a sh'at rachamim and sh'at ratzon. And therefore, Shulchan Aruch says, based on the pasuk in Echa, Kumi Roni Balayla. Kumi Roni, get up and sing in the middle of the night, Lerosh Ashmurot, in the beginning of the Ashmurah. And the Mikubalim talk a lot about the advantages of getting up at midnight, and especially the Mikubalim talk about not sleeping through midnight. Actually, I saw Chaim Ben Sion brings down from the Ben Ish Chai that a lot of the tum'ah that we have, let's say when we wake up, on our hands is only because we sleep through midnight. That's when the tum'ah comes on the hand. But if a person technically would be able to get up before midnight, he really saves himself from a lot of the tum'ah that would come on. And basically, it's a time to pray. The tzaddikim always did tikkun hatzot. In Halab, I heard from the great rabbis that they used to get up in the night, and the shul was packed in the middle of the night, and they had guys learning Gemara, and guys learning Kabbalah, and guys learning Musar. But that was after they made Tikkun Hatzot. Because of that, a few years back, in order to restore this minhag, we brought 18 rabbis, now we're up to 20, and we told them that we'll pay them if they come every night at midnight to the shul and make Tikkun Hatzot. And they do it. If you ever see the way these rabbis do it, it's something to watch. They don't just read it. They actually take off their shoes and they put on sackcloth. You know, like Mordechai wore sackcloth, like you read it from the old days, they wore sackcloth. They have it. Where they get it from, they have sackcloth. And then they sit on the floor. And then if that's not enough, they take actually ashes. And they put ashes on their head, really avilut. And they take their time and they read the Tikkun Hatzot slowly. We'll go through the process of what exactly is done, and then after they finish, that's after they went to the mikveh. So first they go to the mikveh, and then they make this process on our behalf. That's what we do when we support Kolel Hatzot. We're supporting this old practice, and they're our messengers. And then they learn the rest of the night until the morning. And sometimes when we come in, you see them leaving. It's a great thing. The Tikkun Hatzot, Cham Baruch Alav Shalom, I remember telling us in Magen David in 8th grade, if I'm not mistaken, that he remembers even waking up in the middle of the night and seeing his father on the floor praying for the Beit HaMikdash. Nathan Gindi, one of our members, remembers that when he would stay in the same room with Acham Shaul Katzin Alav Shalom. In the middle of the night, you would hear Acham Shaul crying and weeping. He woke up and what happened? And we see him sitting on the floor doing the Tikkun Hatzot. So the pious, righteous people, they actually do this. Now that shouldn't mean that if you don't do it, you're not making a tikkun. The poskim say that when we pray, the prayer is actually like we're bringing sacrifices. So it's a form of, service to the Beit HaMikdash, and therefore the Hakamim taught us that we should pray with simcha. Although at the time of Tikkun HATZOT it's a sad type of moment, but during the Tefillot we should be with simcha. Now he writes over here that if you're up already, now this is quite possible. Let's say in the winter months, let's say in New York, exactly. So midnight is not Cinderella midnight, 12 o'clock. Midnight is halachic midnight, so it could be 11:30. Now it's more like 1 o'clock in the morning. So it's 12:52. So it's hard to stay up till 12:52. But if, let's say, in the winter, it's not uncommon that a person's up at 11:30. So therefore, stay up another 10 minutes and do the Tikkun HATZOT. You're up already. You might as well do the Tikkun. It's something that it's not in our regimen. The Kiryat Shema Baruch Hashem Alamita became a little more mainstream, but this item not yet. But it's in the Sidur. Every Sidur has it. So if they didn't have the guts to rip it out of the Sidur yet, so therefore, obviously, it must have some credibility. Therefore, the Rabbi writes that if you're up already, for sure you should try to stay up and read the Tikkun HATZOT. Now, how do you do Tikkun HATZOT? How do you calculate HATZOT? Basically, it's whatever midday is, that's what midnight is. It's just 12 hours after midday, and that's what you'll see. It's always the same. And basically, you're taking the day from sunrise to sunset. However hours you have, and you're splitting it. And that's the midday. So let's say sunrise today in Brooklyn would be about what, 5:40? That sound right?
5:32.
5:30, it's early. 5:30. So that's 5:30. And sunset is what?
Sunset today? 8:13.
8:13. So we have 12 hours, 6:30, 7:30, 14 hours. So 14 and a half hours.
73.
So 14 and a half hours. So you would take the midpoint of those 14 and a half hours, and wherever the ball drops, that's going to be your HATZOT. And you said already today it's about 12:52 or something like that. So that would mean tonight, if you happen to be up, you have a late Thursday night, guy comes up from dinner or whatever, you should pay note. But Jew always has to know times. A goy, ask him what time is sunrise. Why would he have to know sunrise? I'm not a meteorologist. I'm not a farmer. Why would a goy ever have to know? Or ask a goy when you get to the hotel, and you check it. Do you know when sunset is? Sunset. First of all, what is sunset? Explain what that term means, and then I'll try to figure out what you're talking about. But a Jew always has to know when sunrise is, when sunset is, when HATZOT is, when Haggadah is. Where the Jew is always walking around with a clock, or with a timer, or with a calendar to know exactly the zmanim. So, the old days in the newspapers they used to put sunrise and sunset. Right. I'm not sure they still do that, but who were they writing it for? And the New York Times used to write on Fridays what time candlelighting was. If you remember that. But okay, that was the only emet in the New York Times, by the way. The only true thing that the paper had. The old great lady. The only thing that was true about it was candlelighting time. After that, everything else was shaken. But all the calculations are done from sunrise to sunset. That is there's a rumor, and Rabbi Bitan is going to claim that it's unverified and probably the category of fake news. I remember hearing it. They used to have during the Asiri Teshuvah, they would have Silichot by the Kotel in Israel, and Chabad would be there. It was a big thing. And they used to simulcast it to America. So you're watching this. Now the problem is, they're doing it after midnight. Meaning they're doing it at night, after HATZOT, where you're allowed to do Silichot at that time. But when they're broadcasting it to America on the satellite, it's 6 p.m. It's still broad daylight. So the question then was, we're doing Silichot at this time. First one, does it count? Are you allowed to say the Bayavos? The questions you had. So the rumor at the time that circulated was that Chabad opinion is that the HATZOT follows Israel's HATZOT. So that's it. So as long as it's HATZOT in Israel, so you're okay. And that would be great. If that's true, then we can make the Tikkun HATZOT every day at 6 p.m. and we'll be fine. And then we can end the Seder at 6 p.m. also. You start to sit at 2 p.m. and by 6 o'clock you're done. It's HATZOT, don't eat the apikoma. I mean, it's hard to imagine that's true, but that was what we heard. Maybe it was the guys that were promoting the satellite were saying it, but nonetheless, he writes the note over here. He says that some people report that Maran Yisrael once ruled in public that it's permissible to recite Selichot anywhere in the world after the moment of midnight in Yerushalayim. But he says this is an unreliable report. Now, Halacha Berura, which is Chem David, says something interesting. Halacha Berura says that any countries that are west of Israel, who's got the map? What's west of Israel? Europe? He says if you, that's the other way. West is the other way? So he says if you're west of Israel, you can rely on the Israeli HATZOT for your HATZOT, which would be a little earlier. Well, Iran, I don't think they're not relying on too many things in Israel. I think it's going to be hard to convince the Iranians to rely on Israel for their HATZOT. I think, yeah. But you can try to. That's a nice... he just writes, Halacha Berura ruled that there was a halachic basis to permit people in countries west of the land of Israel to recite TIKKUN HATZOT somewhat before midnight in their locale, since it's after midnight in Jerusalem. Although regarding other halachot, everyone must follow the solar title of their location, but TIKKUN HATZOT is room for leniency, since there's a rabbi called Mikdash Melech and Rabbi Menachem Di Lozano that said that one may recite TIKKUN HATZOT before midnight anywhere. So you rely on like a safek sefeka. Some say TIKKUN HATZOT can be done before midnight, and some say you can rely on Jerusalem. So therefore you put those two together, before midnight at Jerusalem, so I guess you could cheat a little. If you're west of Jerusalem, you could do it a little earlier. Anybody wants to go to a TIKKUN HATZOT that you'll never forget, whenever I'm in Jerusalem, maybe it's by invitation only, but on Thursday nights, Rabbi Benayahu Shemuel, the Rosh Hashiva of the Mekubalim, he has a group of guys, not more than 10, 15 guys, and they go into the inner chamber of the Kodesh Kodashim. You get access. So you see all of them. The Mekubalim get together, they're quiet, they walk in at like after midnight, then they go to the back, all the way in, and there's a shul over there. Rabbi Darzi, Allah Shalom, used to pray there, and they all line up, and the same thing, they take off their shoes, and they start to wail, and they start to sing, and they cry, and it's a long process. They do it very, very slowly, and now because of the war, they add a lot of extra stuff. When we were in Israel now for our shul trip, I went on Thursday night, we started the TIKKUN HATZOT, I'm going to say about 12 o'clock, 12:15, and we finished it after 2. Now that's 2 a.m. That's a long version. I mean, if you read it at home, it takes 10 minutes or 15 minutes, the most. But he does it with kavanot and things like that, and you're doing it in the most auspicious place, right across from the Kodesh Kodashim. So it adds to the effect that you cry for the Beit HaMikdash and the Makom HaMikdash. So there are still some people that take it seriously. He does it at the kotel every Thursday night. Again, definitely something worth your time if you can get in. And then he comes along and he says, okay, now we get to another item. The Yalkut Yosef writes, I don't know what he's writing this over here, but he's just talking about times. Really, when it comes to praying the Amidah, he's saying you shouldn't pray the Amidah till sunrise. That's the earliest you can pray the Amidah. Unless you have to go to work and you have a businessman and you have to go to make parnasah, so the halakha allows you to pray from dawn, which is much earlier. But if you don't have to go to work, there's really no reason why one should pray that early. One should pray minimally the Amidah at sunrise. And Yalkut Yosef came along and agreed with that. Now we get to a principle, and this is the principle that's called quality over quantity. I don't know how we're going to institute this halakha, but if we were serious, the halakha says it's better to pray less with intent than to pray more without intent. Tov me'at bekavana, meharbe belo kavana. So if you're from the guy that said, well, I prayed, 80 pages today. Okay, well, you gunned it down, and you read it like the speed runner. and you didn't understand what you were saying, but you prayed fast. Maybe it's better to pray 40 pages at a slower pace and understand what you're saying. So that's the question. Is it quality or quantity? And the halakha says it's very clear. Quality will always win. Again, I don't know how that's going to manifest itself. What are you going to do now? You're going to tell the shuls, skip after the siddur now? You know why you're not going to do that? Because I'll tell you what's going to happen. The small amount that you're going to do will turn into quantity again, meaning you're going to end up praying that fast. And then before you know it, you say, well, we're not praying it qualitatively, so let's cut that out. And before you know it, the tefillah is going to be modeh, and that's it, the bihananya, and then that's it. What are you doing over here? That's it, the rabbi said, quality over quantity. So I don't think in reality that we're going to change the siddur, but it's for the person. For example, somebody came to me today on a Thursday, and they said, Rabbi, when you were saying the Monday and Thursday stuff, I got to be honest with you, I didn't say from Tamanu Mera'ot to the end. I was able to say Tamanu, and then I went to the last one, Apoteh Hayad B'Tshuva, and I said it slowly, and by the time I was able to say those two paragraphs with the right kavanah, you finished the whole thing. Who's better? Well, I'll say I have no claims against you. Privately, if you feel that you're able to have more kavanah by saying less of the text, so then you shouldn't force yourself to say we get stuck into thinking that Borei Olam is counting the words. And he's not counting the words, he's counting the heart, he's counting the kavanah. Now again, if you tell me that that you do that in the Amidah, where you skip the 13 berachot, and you're down to to 6 or 7 berachot because you want to have kavanah, I'm not going to be too happy with you. But when it comes to the supplications and things like that, there's definitely room to say that slower with a better kavanah is better. And that, by the way, is not only in prayer, it's in learning as well. God doesn't count the pages. So therefore, the poskim will tell you, Mishnah brings it down, that there should be a level of quality. We really should study it, with more understanding than not. Problem is, if you're a businessman and you only have 1 hour to learn a day, if you're not going to learn a certain regiment, you're not going to get anywhere in life. So that's why we have the Daf Yomi and things like that. But otherwise, if you have more time, of course, a person should spend his time studying, as deep as he can. So that applies to learning as well. There are certain benefits of learning a disciplined learning, like that for me, because it keeps you regimented. The disadvantage is that you might be learning at a faster pace than if you would learn something slower and understand it more. But nonetheless, like we said, it seems that that's the minhag in Klai said they accepted upon themselves to learn like that. But the Arizal, for example, he didn't have a discipline. His discipline was, he had a regiment, but his regiment was Chok Yisrael. That he did. He read Chok every day. Chacham Ben Zion says even somebody that is in yeshiva, even a rabbi, Chok is like a multivitamin. You shouldn't skip the Chok. It's a big thing. People neglect it. I know Recham Baruch never missed a Chok in his life. Every day, no matter what his regiment was, and the Arizal too. So if the Arizal took time for Chok, that must be so important. But after that, he didn't have set things he was learning. He would learn his allotment, but he would study it with great analysis. So that's that. And then the last thing is what Rav Chidas says, and Mishnah brings it down also. In your daily learning, one should include musar. What is musar? We'll call it ethics or rebuke. What is musar? Musar is like, where you're reading books that give you yirat shamayim and books that motivate you and remind you about the importance of the service and keeps you aware of punishment and reward and olam haba. It's like a refocus. And the Gemara says, Barati Yetzer Hara, I created the Yetzer Hara, Barati Torah Tevanim. The only antidote against the Yetzer Hara is Torah. And what type of Torah? Musar. So that's interesting. The words of the Hachamim are the antidote against evil inclination. So if you're not learning Musar every day, you can be learning all this stuff. But if you don't have a regiment of Musar, it becomes a stale. And the big difference between the Ashkenaz yeshivas and the Sepharad yeshivas was, when I learned in Lakewood, we used to learn Musar at the end of the day. So that would be, let's say, at 7 o'clock, and from 7 o'clock until, let's say, 7:20, 20 minutes, everybody would learn Musar. And of course, that would be the weakest seder of the day. That's it. You finish your main learning, everybody would just be, the few guys that would stick around for Musar. And there would be a lot of tumulting in the hallway. And one time in Lakewood Yeshiva, they have, in the first days of the Zman, of the new semester, everybody's in the hall trying to find out who the Havrutot are going to be. They're trying to find your study partner. So it's like a shuk. So the guy in Lakewood, when he saw the guys in the hallway, in the morning, he says, what, all day long Musar today? He says, what, Musar all day long? What are you doing in the hallway? Musar not till 7 o'clock. But in Purat Yosef, they actually learned Musar in the morning. And that was the custom of the Sfaradim, to learn Musar in the morning. And to me, it makes sense. And I'm not trying to change the system in the yeshiva world. But why does it make sense? When do you give the pep talk? After the game's over? Or you give the pep talk before the game? So Musar is a pep talk. It motivates you, it excites you, it controls the etc. That should be done first thing in the morning. Then you're pumped for the day. At 7 o'clock already, you learned already 10 hours. So now what? You're going to learn Musar and eat dinner and go to sleep. So therefore, it's might be, again, if you can do it at that time, do it. I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying probably preferably once you do it in the morning. What does that mean to us? So in your briefcase of books, so now if you're part of this shul, in your briefcase, if I would open up anybody's briefcase at any time, spot check, so I would see Gemara Baba Metziah, that's for sure, because that's the daf for me. I would see Mishnayot Pe'ah, that's for sure, because that's what we're learning in Mishnayot. And I would see Bekiim BeHalacha. Everybody has their Bekiim BeHalacha, because that's what we're learning. Those are regiment items that those days, you can't pass a day without visiting those 3 books, if you're learning in this shul over here. But if you're part of the Kabbalistic group, so you'll see Da'atut Buna also, you'll see in there, but that's for the elite. But now there got to be a 4th book in the knapsack, and that's a Musar book. What's a Musar book? You could pick it. Misnah Yesharim, that's Path of the Just, that's Rabbi Moshe Chaim Lutzato, or you have Sha'aret Teshuvah, or you have Chovot HaLevavot, there's Upeli Yoetz, there's a lot of books like that are ethical. Pirkei Avot, now's the time of the Pirkei Avot. These are all books that will just give you, an awakening, and everything needs chizuk. So if you don't remind yourself what you're doing and what the purpose is, and that there's olam haba, and this world is a sketch, and the whole world is temporary, you don't remind yourself of that, you're going to be reminded by the other side that this world is permanent, and there's no olam haba, and the more money you make is the more successful, and live for today, for tomorrow you shall die, and eat and enjoy and be merry. That's what we're going to teach you. To undo that, you need to learn the other side, and that's what Musar is. Musar keeps you in line. And Rabbi Moshe Salanta would say, when you learn Musar, you should learn it out loud. And in his yeshiva, they would actually repeat over and over the same line until it penetrated the soul. And that's a very, very strong medicine against the Yetzer Hara, the study. So a lot of people come along and say, I understand, I studied Torah, but how come the Yetzer Hara is very strong on me? And the answer is, are you learning Musar? So no, it's not part of my diet. And that's what he says over here. The Mishnah ended at Rav Chida quoted the Hayy Adam that everyone must set aside some time each day to study Musar. Every person has to battle the Yetzer Hara, and the greater a person is, the harder his Yetzer Hara is to struggle, to bring him to sin. The antidote for the Yetzer Hara is to study the words of our sages, extolling trades of piety. And and that's it for today. Okay, Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen. V'chananya Baruch Hashem Zasar Baruch Hu Zechut Yisrael Lefit V'Akevan Zot Shemar Okasem Atzitko V'Torah V'Yadei.